Okay. Okay. If you could let me know in the chat, make sure that it's not a blank screen for you. Is that coming through? Yes. No, maybe. Excellent. Okay. So, carrying on with this discussion then. Point number 7. Well, actually, just to do a brief review so that these stay fresh. So, first, we became fully informed. Yes, we became fully informed because if you don't know what you're doing, then you can't do it unless somebody else is guiding you the whole time. Also, it's really important to become fully informed if you want to develop proper motivation and intention to do the practice. And having proper motivation and intention is the antidote to laziness, being defined as a whole bunch of things that we talked about in the last video. The antidotes to laziness rely primarily on conviction, basically that the conviction that what you're struggling to do is worth doing. If you're not convinced that what you're doing is worth doing, then of course you're going to put it off and you're going to think all sorts of things. If you haven't studied meditation theory well enough, you'll think, oh, well, other people can do this, but I can't do it, for example. So even being disheartened and thinking I can't do this, even though other people can be overcome through conviction, i.e., through study. Once you're convinced, yes, this is worth doing, then the desire to do it will come up. And then because of the desire, effort or enthusiasm, energized, enthusiastic action will arise naturally. You'll naturally begin to undertake your practices. And since you know what you're doing, you'll make progress. So this is all very logical, very straightforward. And by the way, these instructions are sometimes from texts that are from the years 300 or 400 or 700. So not very much has changed in human psychology since that time. Once you have developed the enthusiasm and the effort capable of carrying out meditation, you need to set certain boundaries in your life, mental, verbal, and physical, that allow you to actually make progress in meditation. If you wanted to be super hardcore about it, you would find after many years of study and developing a relationship with a particular teacher, you would go into retreat. If you wanted to attain calm abiding, say, if you're fully prepared, you could do it in about 6 months. Sometimes they say you could do it in 3 months if you have the right kinds of techniques coming from Tantra, probably. And one also says, actually, in real life, you can do it in, I don't know, a year or 2 years if you have the right techniques also. So all of this depends on having the right boundaries set up in your life, which we discussed last time. But primarily what that means is basically having a retreat in the midst of life, right? Setting boundaries in your life that allow you to make progress. Which has with turning your ordinary activities into the path, into the actual path. One of the ways that you turn your ordinary activities into the path is keeping pure vows and ethics. As I said, allows you to cultivate mindfulness and alertness, which are the same qualities of mind you need for meditation. It also stops all sorts of craziness from happening in your life because, people want to harm you when you harm them. It also stops you from having regret and remorse because you did bad things. And it stops you having anxiety from thinking, oh, others are going to harm me now because I harmed them. So vows and ethics, very important. And then you need to have little desire and be satisfied with what you have. Um, this does not mean you need to give away everything and live like a Franciscan monk. What it means, you shouldn't be seeking out the very best of everything as a regular kind of activity, and you should train yourself to be satisfied with having what you need. If you have what you need and you're safe and you should think, so many people don't have that. And think about the state of mind we're trying to attain. Satisfied with the object of meditation, any desire to jump to the next thing. If you need to have this, I need to have the very best of that. When I need to have the perfect clothes and you're training your mind to chase objects of attachment. And so being content in your ordinary life and not cultivating contentment in your ordinary life creates more distraction that pulls you out when you're trying to sit on the cushion and train. Okay? Then number 6, avoiding the disturbances caused by being involved in many activities. From my experience, if you engage in any kind of activity whatsoever, your mind will later feed that back to you in your meditation as a distraction. It almost doesn't matter what it is. Even your virtuous activities, your good activities. If you do a whole bunch of prostrations or mantra recitations or reciting sutras or other Buddhist things or religious things from other traditions, if you're not Buddhist, your mind will feed those images and ideas back to you while you're trying to keep your mind on the activity. So also there's a natural sort of disturbance that happens if we've all been through this. If you overcommit yourself to different things, you begin building up burnout, So if you're involved in too many things, then there's not enough of you left. You're already burning out the training. So much more could be said about that, but that should be pretty logical. 7th, fully eliminating attachment and all other kinds of conceptual thoughts. Now, of course, it goes without saying that if you're trying to attain calm abiding in retreat for 3 months or 6 months or a year, at some point, you're going to be fully non-conceptual for very long periods of time while you're calm abiding. Here in the real world, outside of training in calm abiding, we have to use concepts all the time. There's no way around it. However, as a general principle, to try to align with this principle, there are all sorts of answers in the Buddhist canon for anger, for attachment in the way it's defined here, where you're exaggerating the positive qualities of things, for arrogance, for haughtiness, jealousy. So all of these disturbing mental attitudes that you have that stop you from being able to attain the deeper states of concentration that are described on the 9 stages, probably from about stage 6 upwards. There are specific antidotes described in the Buddhist canon that you can apply to those particular problems and make them less. Furthermore, to speak a little bit more down to earth, if you have some kind of psychological problem that requires medication, don't avoid that. If you need to take an antidepressant, or if you have a serious problem like PTSD or schizophrenia, or go get help. Buddhism doesn't have any techniques in its canon that I'm aware of, and I've been studying for a long time, for dealing with abnormal states of psychology. Buddhism begins with the assumption that you are, normal is not particularly good, but that you're relatively normal, So Buddhism starts there and says, okay, if you are, normal is pretty screwed up. But if you start in the normal level of screwed up, here are the techniques to make you extraordinary. So Buddhism in Western psychological terms is what's called a wellness psychology. It is a type of a set of psychological techniques, to put it a bit bluntly, I suppose, that help you exceed a normal level of wellness in terms of your psychological well-being. However, if you're starting with some other major problem that's so overwhelming that you can't even get to like a baseline level of screwed up like the rest of us, then it's totally fine to take medications, do therapy, do other things to get back to a relative level of balance. Okay? So just to provide one example, extremely attached to wealth, just as an example. If you, for some reason, you're obsessed with being super, super rich for no particular reason, maybe you do have, okay, fine. But if for no particular reason other than wanting other people to see you as important and wanting to take the best vacations and whatever, you want to become rich, then you can consider again and again that at the time of death, you can't even take one penny with you. And so this is a type of rumination meditation. This will be at the end of the retreat. This will be on Sunday, will be our topic. But you would then contemplate a series of reasons why it doesn't make sense to exaggerate the benefits of wealth. Now, there are real benefits to wealth. If you're wealthy, you can donate to charitable causes. I mean, the Buddha describes all this in his canon. This isn't like outside the spiritual path for Buddhists. Especially if you're a layperson, you need to be making enough money to support yourself. The Buddha even said, if you make good money doing work that's honest, you can. One of the things that happens is you get to enjoy your wealth by having nice meals and the ordinary things that you get to have if you have money. But if you exaggerate the benefit of all of that stuff you get to have because of money, and it's distracting you or preventing you from doing the practice, then you need to do contemplation and think about all of these reasons why that doesn't make sense, right? The chocolate cake you ate, the $100 piece of chocolate cake you ate 4 weeks ago is providing you with no benefits now. The $2,000 suit you purchased 5 years ago that you wore a couple of times is providing you with no benefit now. And when you die, all of the benefits of your wealth go away. So since these benefits are extremely temporary, it behooves you to do some kind of activity where the benefits are not temporary, at least according to Buddhism, right? If you're really attached to your looks, then you can consider that your skin is basically like a bag. It's like they say Venerable Shantideva in his Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life, he said it's almost like a sack. It's your skin's like a sack, and inside it is just all of these things that we find horrifying and disgusting. Like if you get a little tiny cut, it's a tiny, tiny cut, everyone's horrified. So it's just this tiny veneer of stuff that we think is attractive. But if we look too closely at it, we're disgusted. Like what if you zoom in on human skin, it's disgusting. And if you break the skin just a little bit, everyone is terrified and horrified, right? And then, of course, when you look inside, the human body is just it's like a bag that carries pus and blood and piss and feces and bile and vomit and bacteria and viruses and bones and bone marrow. So if you're extremely if your big problem is lust, think about this again and again and again. If your main problem is that you're obsessed with your own looks, think about this again and again and again, right? So whatever your main problem is, you can cultivate the antidotes to those, and then your meditation practice will get deeper as a result. Yeah? Okay. The eighth reason, or the eighth thing that you need, even if you had all of the above worked out, if your body if your body is extremely uncomfortable, then despite your desire to make progress, and despite having a good internal state, generally speaking, and despite arranging your life to try to make progress, it's going to be really hard. So in the Pali Canon, there's not much about this, actually, but the Buddha does say in one sutta that when your body is free from illness and discomfort, endowed with good digestion, not too cold, not of moderate strength, fit for exertion, this is one of the factors that you need in order to reach the goal of nirvana. So if we take this as a general description of what's required, basically it seems like what he's saying is you need to be in good health, and your body needs to be moderate strength, right? You don't have to be a bodybuilder, but you need to have a body that's ready to do some work and is pretty comfortable to do work in. So one of the things you need is relatively good health and a relatively a body that's working relatively well. What this means is that if you're struggling with a condition that completely prevents you from doing practice, then your practice should be working on the stuff that makes your body better, right? Because if you want to make a lot of progress in meditation, you need your body to be working better. So your practice becomes making your body work better, right? That being said, you're going to have a lot of, as you get older, you'll have a lot of aches and pains, and there's really no way to make it all go away. So there's no perfect condition. But generally speaking, you want the body to be relatively fit, relatively healthy, and that will support your training. If you don't have that, it's extremely difficult to make progress. Although there are some examples of people who make a great deal of progress with those difficulties in place. In general, it's important to do. Just a couple more references from the Gelug tradition, which is my main tradition. Sonam, which is like an academic title in the Gelug tradition. And he says, looking after our body and mind is work. It's absurd to think we can help others effectively if we can't even look after ourselves. So you need to look after yourself. Similarly, one of my teachers from London commented that in particular, when you reach the Vajrayana tradition, the Tantric, that one of the vows is to take proper care of your. So you're not allowed to just abandon your body in order to pursue the other goals of the practice. You need to take care of your body also. Yes, I think I've said enough, haven't I? I hope so. What I recommend is taking on some type of internal martial art or yoga. There's Qigong, Tai Chi, there's Bagua, Yichuan. In the Japanese tradition, there's Aikido. There's certain forms of karate quite good for this. In India, there's a martial art, Kalari Payatu, and there's another one. It's a Sikh martial art, and I'm forgetting the name at the moment. I actually have. Let me see. Vidya, Shastar Vidya. And then, of course, the traditional forms of yoga. So I recommend the more hardcore yogas that have made their way to the West, that have Hatha Yoga, Ashtanga, Kundalini. These are designed to make the body more suitable for meditation. So I recommend those, all of those, any of those. Number 9, and this one's quite tough for people living in the West: overcoming radical individualism. So it is true that we have to exert the effort to do all of this ourselves, but it's really, really important to recognize and realize and absorb at some point in the process Doesn't have to be today. And certainly doesn't have to be in regards to me, you know? But there's no self-styled path that can take you beyond yourself. Let me say that again. There's no self-designed path to getting over yourself, right? How could there be? How could taking the most profound teachings in the universe for getting over ourselves and making it more about me, how could that possibly be the thing that helps you get over yourself? It's a contradiction in terms, right? So the radical individualistic thing that comes from Western culture and the Western Enlightenment, to a degree, needs to be maybe not given up entirely, but it needs to be reduced. There is a strong communal aspect to these kinds of trainings where you're relying on teachers, you're relying on mentors, you're relying on the community to help you get over yourself. This is emphasized so much, in fact, that the Buddha said this. He was asked by Venerable Ananda, his primary attendant. Venerable Ananda said, "Isn't it true that admirable friendship, admirable companionship, admirable camaraderie is half of the holy life?" This is what Venerable Ananda said. And the Buddha actually reacted kind of badly, for the Buddha. When I say badly, I mean he reacted kind of. It's hard to read. It's a bit almost like sadness or a bit of a correction. And he said, I don't have it here, but he says it like this. He says, "Don't say that. Don't say that." He says it twice. He said, admirable friendship, admirable companionship, and admirable camaraderie is actually the whole of the holy life. And he goes on to say, people who have admirable friends and so forth will accomplish the goal, right? They'll accomplish nirvana. So this is extremely important. This is extremely important. It's not secondary at all. That we need to have comrades on the path, friends on the path, and in particular, admirable comrades and friends on the path. And this is a theme that this quote here from the Buddha is from the Pali Canon. And this is a theme you find running all the way through from the Pali Canon to the Mahayana material to the Tantric material. You need to have mentors and companions who are a little bit further along than you, or at least at your level. And this is a big part of how you get over yourself and make more progress than you would have made if you just made it all about you, right? I just find it remarkable. The Buddha said, basically, having a supportive community and having mentors on the path is the entirety of the path. It's not 10%, it's not 50%, it's the whole path. So all of these people who tell you just need to read the books and watch the YouTube videos and whatever, I don't want to say they're lying. I just think they're deeply misunderstanding how this stuff works. Okay? So this is one that I added on text on this subject. But when you look at the inspiring examples from history and modern times, all of the greatly realized practitioners of the current era and history all have mentors and comrades on the path. So what admirable friendship? So the Buddha defines this in the Pali Canon in this way. There's a case where a layperson in whatever town or village he may dwell spends time with householders or householders' sons, young or old, who are advanced in virtue. He talks with them, engages them in discussion. He emulates consummate conviction, and in this case, we're talking about basically conviction about the Buddha's teachings, in those who are consummate in conviction. So you find people that have more faith in this stuff than you do, and you talk to them about why they have more faith in it than you do. And what other kinds of discussions? You talk to people who are consummate in virtue. So people who are holding vows that you don't hold, or have held vows that you already do hold for much longer than you have. And you find out, how do you do this better? How do I hold these vows better? What do these vows really mean? You know? Those who are consummate in generosity, you talk to them about being consummate in generosity. So those who have already made some progress in becoming more charitable, which is an extremely important part of Buddhist practice, and those who are consummate in discernment as well. So discernment is referring to the wisdom aspect of Buddhism. So do you have the, let's see. Well, actually, discernment here could be a little bit more broad than just the wisdom aspect of Buddhism. But in any case, you're talking with people who have let's say maybe more, if not more intelligence than you in terms of these subjects. They have studied them long enough to understand more fine distinctions in the subject of training and meditation and training in the path more generally. And if we were to limit it just to the wisdom aspect, that they have a greater understanding of selflessness and emptiness and impermanence than you do, right? If we were talking about meditation here, then we could add this on and extrapolate based on what the Buddha said. And you want to spend time around people and spend time with people and talk to people who have more experience in meditation than you do. So this is, according to the Buddha, overcoming your radical individualism. I'm slightly adding to the tradition here in saying it's the whole of the holy life, indispensable condition for making progress. Even if you had everything else that we've discussed up to now, you might still not make very much progress if you're not spending time around people who know more than you and who are more capable than you on the path, or at least talking with them regularly. And then finally, never ceasing your mental development. So I've included this because it's actually really easy to stop making progress. And the reason for that is that during serious meditation training, all sorts of really strange things can happen. So you can see flashes of light. You can see sort of flashes of light that are kind of like lightning. You can feel that your whole body has dissolved into a bright light like the sun or the moon. You can have visions of blue Buddhas melting through your head. You can have visions of horrific demonic beings dismembering things. You can have visions of, you can feel electric shocks running through the body. As a matter of fact, one of the students in the course said that they were feeling something like this today, where you feel like electricity moving through the body, and sometimes you have involuntary muscle spasms while you're practicing. You can have burning sensations in parts of the body. Sometimes you'll have brief occurrences of psychic powers, but usually, if you haven't attained calm abiding yet, usually your psychic powers they're hit and miss. And so then, of course, you'll also have those powers disappear. Sometimes, seemingly randomly, you'll be training, and then a deep well of emotions will swell up, either positive or negative, and completely overwhelm you. And if they're positive, they intoxicate you, and if they're negative, they crush you completely. And they seem to come out of nowhere. And this is this is just from sitting down and trying to concentrate your mind. Obviously, you can experience intense mental bliss, intense physical bliss. Sometimes your body will feel really light and almost indestructible. Other times it'll feel really, really heavy. Sometimes your body will seem to become huge. Sometimes it'll seem as though your mind has moved outside your body. So I could go on and on and on about the strange, and I say here from a conventional perspective, strange things that happen when you train in meditation, or can happen when you train in meditation. Some of them sublime, some of them fiercely terrible. In Zen, anytime any of these things happen, the old masters just say makyo, which literally means a cave for ghosts, ghost cave. So all of these experiences, these temporary experiences that you have in meditation that are extremely distracting from the actual process, can stop your mental development. This is critical. There is a huge list of plateaus that don't lead anywhere, that take you no further, that don't actually mean much, except that your mind is the thing creating your experience of reality. Your mind is the thing creating your experience of reality. Therefore, when you start working on controlling your mind, all sorts of weird stuff starts to happen in your reality. And I'm not talking about like synchronicity and all of that. I'm just talking about weird things happen in your perception, things appear, sometimes psychic powers occur, flashes of light, weird feelings in your body, blah, blah, blah. And all of it means nothing. All it means is you're trying to control the thing that creates your reality, maybe for the first time in your life, maybe for the first time ever, you know. So this becoming distracted by these and trying to chase them and create them again and again will stop your development. So even if you had other conditions up to now, if you started chasing something that means nothing down a rabbit hole, you can spend years wasting your time. I've done this. This is not theoretical. And other people I know have done this or know people who have done this. So this is extremely common, which is why I've put it here. And this is why in Zen they have a whole expression about it. Don't turn these things in. Don't. These things are like a ghost. When they happen, you should go, oh yeah, there's like this ghost. If you found a ghost in your house, you wouldn't build a little place for them to live, right? You wouldn't give them a cave to live in. You would do an exorcism. Okay. So on the one hand, you can these experiences are coming up. I was told that these things might happen. Great. This means I'm actually working, and then let it go and carry on doing is the actual things that develop your mind are, and don't get sidetracked into stuff that doesn't mean anything and doesn't do anything, right? That's the key point. So these are the 10 things I think that really, really make a big in terms of your training. And if you do these things, a lot more detail. The link is below. A lot more detail you can read during your break times, etc. If you would like. But these 10 things, I think, are absolutely indispensable if you want to make tremendous progress in meditation. Okay? So, having come this far now, we've discussed the 9 stages of meditation, right? We discussed the main mental factors involved in training in meditation. And now we discussed the main conditions that are required to make sustainable progress in meditation, including not losing the motivation to do the practice, not getting distracted by weird crap that happens when you do the practice, not being so deeply involved with your own ego that you're unable to take advice from people who know more than you. You know, these sorts of things. So now I think beyond this retreat, beyond Sunday, you should have the tools to make consistent progress in your practice as an ordinary person. Okay, so hopefully that helps. The next session will be at 5 o'clock. Yes, and we'll be back to actually doing Foundation 2, and we'll be doing, I think, just the remaining 3 sessions today will just be intensive practice. Okay, so come on time, come prepared. See you then.